Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you a long-awaited short story versus episode video. This one has taken a while to do because back in the day I would review random episodes before ever reading the book counterparts or short story counterparts, and because it took me so long to get to this first Tales to Give You Goosebumps book, that's why I had to postpone doing this video for this specific story. But now that it's done, I can finally do it. I did rewatch the episode for posterity reasons, and I still think the same thing, so it holds up. The story in question we're going to be talking about is The House of No Return, short story versus episode. Now, the short story, I gave this about a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's pretty fine for these short stories in this Tales series. It's nothing too special. It doesn't get too much wrong. It just kind of lacks in a lot of areas to make it stand out. But for it being the first and probably the most reprinted story in its pure form, I guess I can see why this is one of the more popular and endearing short stories out there in the fandom. People seem to talk about this one a lot, and it makes sense. The episode, I think back in my review way back when, I gave it a 4.2 out of 5 stars. And rewatching it, I think my rating still holds up for this. I think this is an above average episode for the show. Not without its issues, but I think there are a lot of things about it in terms of how it lays out its plot that I really enjoy, possibly over the book, or I guess short story in this case, which will make this an interesting comparison. Because if you're not familiar with how I do these short story or book versus episode videos, I essentially run down a lot of criteria. And the main ones I like to run down are characters. And I go through the characters in each version of the story and pick out which ones I think are better in whatever version they're in over the other. Then I like to go over atmosphere, which one had a better atmosphere. Sometimes that ties into aesthetics. And for this case, there is an atmosphere aesthetic dealing with the time of year it's laid out in. The short story is Halloween based and the episode isn't. So I guess for the sake of this, I might as well cover that, because a lot of people say that this is like a Halloween short story, and it kind of is. So I guess I'll include that there. And then the last 3 things I like to go over are plot and how it's laid out, which one had a better plot. The climax, which is the build-up and release of the story, which one had a better climax, and then the ending, which one had a better ending. So we have a smaller cast of characters for this story, so this one might be easy to do. The big 3 that I think is a good starting off point is the Danger Club, or the Danger Incorporated Club that is known as the same thing in the episode, just with the added word. So we have Robbie, Lori, and Nathan. Let's start off with Robbie, since Robbie is the leader of this Danger Club group in either version. I think in the episode, he's more of an equal to his peers, and they're more of a 3-headed dragon, kind of, going over the ideas a bit more. As in the short story, he's more of the clear leader, and what he says kind of influences the group, and he can put his foot down and all that, and they kind of, listen when he barks. He's more of a bully in the short story. He has more of a character and a monologue than what we get in the episode. I feel like the 3 of them are more evenly spread in the narrative in the episode, which can be considered a positive as a whole in terms of how it's laying out its plot. But in terms of Robbie's just stock character, I think I prefer him in the short story, given all that we were given, because he is the narrator. He has the monologue. There's just more to chew on there. Even though events-wise in the story, he basically does the same thing, just in mildly different contexts. So there's that. The next character we can go over is Nathan. Nathan is probably the most superfluous character in this entire story, either way you go. Nathan is fine in the short story. He's just kind of a lackey. You don't really get to see much of his character until later on in the short story, and even then he doesn't do much. In the episode, he does have more play in the story. He does have, I guess, more input in what happens in the events. And he's, like I said, he's kind of spread even with the 3 of the kids in the Danger Club a little bit better. So in terms for Nathan, I'm going to give the edge to the episode here. And Lori is similar. However, in the short story, I think that she is almost as conniving as Robbie is, the leader. And in the episode, she has the same qualities, but I think in the episode, she just has a little more charm and a little more to her personality that comes through than what we get in the short story. So, with that being said, for Lori, I'm going to give the edge to the episode. I just think she's better here. Now, a lot of you are probably expecting me to go over this character. He's probably the most famous from this story, and that is Chris Wakely. Chris Wakely, I've seen a lot of people say he's one of the best Goosebumps protagonists of all time, and I think a lot of people are talking about this episode version of him more so than this, because in the short story, he's in the story for sure. I mean, he's a new kid, and the Danger Club wants to recruit him because they've run out of recruits. And he's kind of like a scaredy cat, and he tells them off, says, I don't want to do this, which forces them to bring him into this haunted house for initiation on Halloween night in the short story. But we don't really get to see much of his perspective. It's just all in third person for him. As in the episode, this is one of the two dynamic episodes of the show, kind of like a Haunted Mass 2, where we get shifting perspectives in the story. So you get Danger Club's perspective, and you get Chris's solo perspective, and all the harrowing stuff that he had while he went inside this haunted house during his initiation that we just did not get to see in the short story because it all happened off page. I think Chris is definitely more sympathetic in the episode. I think he has more of a story, and that build-up is more tense with him, and we get to see his perspective. I don't know, there's just more there. I kind of think that he is overhyped as one of these great Goosebumps protagonists. I mean, he is good, but there's not really that much going for the story other than he outsmarts this trio, right? So, in a lot of ways, I can kind of see it either way, but I'm going to have to give Chris to the episode. I just think he's better here, for sure. Chris's mom, I guess, is in the short story briefly. She's pretty much only in the episode, so Chris's mom goes to the episode. And then we have the villains of the story, which is the two ghosts, the couple ghost that is said to haunt the house inside. Well, at least in the episode, because in the short story, it's just called The House of No Return, and it never builds on the legend that's actually in the episode. The short story has nothing of no backstory of ghosts. They don't know what's inside of it. It's more of a last-minute twist added on, so you don't really get to feel or sense what their characters are like or might be like before you encounter them. The episode does a fantastic job characterizing these two. I don't think they have names, so I'm just going to call them the couple ghosts. They're essentially two characters that, at least in the episode, they lost a child, and that drove them crazy and upset, and they spent the rest of their life, in agony, and they died in the home, and they're thought to now haunt it and throw it away anybody ever to go in there, and it's dangerous. But it turns out the legend is true. So I think, yet again, there's just more to the characters in the episode. So for the ghosts, the villains, I'm going to give it to the episode. So let's wrap up characters. All but one go to the episode here. So I think characters, episode's got it. Now for atmosphere. Atmosphere is a bit different, and I know we're kind of playing into aesthetics, so we might as well cover both of these in one. The Halloween aesthetic on top of the atmosphere of both versions here. The episode feels just kind of basic and bland for Ultimate Goosebumps standards, because back in season 3, they started to put this cheap night filter on daytime footage to make it look like nighttime. It's just a generic looking house. It's not Halloween. There's no real atmosphere. It's just suburbs where the stuff is going on. And that's just not as fun, I guess, compared to the short story, which has that element to it. It's just some generic haunted house in the suburbs. But at least the kids are wearing costumes. At least there's trick-or-treaters out. There's some sort of atmosphere to kind of latch onto. And in terms of how the story lays out, the innards of the house, I think the short story doesn't have hardly anything going on inside the home, as the episode spends a lot of its minutes inside of the house, showing the audience what the inside of the house looks like, and it's kind of creepy. So there's a lot of things to kind of peel back. I definitely think in terms of aesthetics, the short story wins with the Halloween theme. However, in terms of atmosphere overall, I'm going to give it to the episode counterpart just because there's more to chew on where it counts, if that makes any sense. So yeah, atmosphere overall goes to the episode, but the aesthetic of the Halloween theme goes to the short story. Now, in terms of plot, which one had a better plot? I think this one's a clear runaway. The short story is concise. It's concise, it's condensed, it knows what it is. It's not trying to bite off more than it can chew. However, there's just not a lot dealing with where it counts. I mean, all the stuff inside of the house near the end plays out the same. They're essentially the same story. You have the three bully kids want to recruit this new kid because nobody else can match the initiation. They try to recruit this one guy before they give up and go to Chris. Chris ends up, not wanting to participate, so they have to end up forcing him inside of this home. And he actually stays in there, presumably for an entire hour, passes the initiation. They think that he might be in trouble. They go in the house, try to rescue him, but there's a recontextualization, and you learn what's really going to happen to these three kids. It's the same plot, but there's just more to it in the episode counterpart. I get the appeal of the pace. I get the appeal of the short and sweetness in the short story. I get there's some fun Halloween nods and some Halloween jokes thrown in there, there's a Freddy Krueger costume. There's a scene with Chris handing out candy and they snatch him in a goofy way. That's kind of fun. But the episode really spends a lot of its focus shifting the narratives between characters, characterizing Chris individually, characterizing these three bully kids, spending moments inside of the home, in the mid portion, just unveiling that atmosphere. The plot is just laid out a little bit more grander, or I should say a lot more grander in comparison in the episode. So for that reason, the plot goes to the episode. Now for the climax is essentially this. It comes to the point where Chris, in either version, he's been in the house for a while, and this prompts the attention of the two kids, or the three kids. Well, I don't know why I said two there. But the three kids, they get some attention to the fact that he's been in there for a while and he's probably going to be initiated. And that leads them to want to go into the house to see if he's still in there. That's essentially the climax. And I can kind of count this as a climax, even though it is not really one. Just because the anticipation of the kids waiting for an hour to see if Chris can survive, and also to see if Chris survived himself. Us as the audience are curious to see what happened to him. I can count that as a climax. I think the build up to the climax is definitely better in the episode. It's still more so the same in the short story, all said and done. It's like the same thing. Give or take a few jokes made by Laurie. I have to probably say they're about even. There's nothing much too concernably different, other than there's a sequence with Chris screaming towards a staircase. If I had to give a slight edge, I'd give it to the episode, but then again, that's not really fair, but yeah, that's about even here. Now the ending is essentially the same thing, except there's a little more to it in the episode. The short story, the trio comes into the house. They look for Chris. They end up getting spooked by this mist. The mist shows some faces. They tell them that they're going to be here forever. It's called the House of No Return. But in the episode, it plays on that missing child legend a whole lot more. And I don't think it's even in the short story at all. So the missing child element gives it kind of like this kidnapping thing in a quite literal sense. And it makes it more unnerving. And the way the ghosts look is also creepy. And how the and how there's a thunderstorm outside in like a cliche way. I don't know. It just all works in the episode splendidly well. And if there was ever an episode that's hingent on the ending of it, it's definitely the House of No Returns ending. Because if they would have botched it or made it goofy, it would not be as revered as it is by some in the community, I feel. But in terms of endings, I just think there's more to the episode again, so I'm going to have to give it to the episode. So, all in all, the House of No Return, which one is superior? I think, minus Robbie, who is the narrator of the short story, and minus the climax feeling about on par to the episodes, everything else is a runaway victory for the episode. So this is a clear win here. If I had to say which one wins, the episode is superior. And it's by almost a mile, in my opinion. It's not by a few hairs. It's just, there's way more to go over in the episode. Now, I can definitely see if you still prefer the short story for the pace of it, for how quick of a read it is compared to the episode, that does kind of drag. And this is where we're getting into, comparing negatives of both of them. The episode does drag out the idea almost a little too long. This is one of those clear examples in the show. I brought this up with Attack the Mutant. Maybe if it needed 4 to 5 extra minutes to do just a single part episode, because that's really all you needed to do that episode justice. If the show was allowed just a 5 to 10 minute extra window back in the day, some of these episodes could have been made way better with more time. And then some episodes could have benefited from a little less time. This is one of those examples. Sure, I get it. But for me, I just think the episode is the superior version of the idea, and it mostly comes down to the dynamicism of the characters and how the plot does kind of drag, but it spends its time characterizing these characters a little more individually, and in my opinion, just makes it more riveting in the process. So, yeah, clear victory for me. It's not going to be the same for everyone. This is a book and short story franchise, of course. Go read The House of No Return before you watch the episode. I think if you do that, you'll start to appreciate the changes the showrunners made with this episode, and it will make you easy, if you do this, and as just a general practice, to give your roses to the show more often, because a lot of the times, some people might watch the episode first and then read the book, and they like something more in the book, and then they just start trashing the episode, even though they normally want to do that. And it could happen vice versa, where you read the short story or book first and you watch the episode and get upset that it's not a faithful adaptation. But trust me here on this one, it's basically the same story, just there's more to the episode. And I don't think that's an issue to add more to it, and that's kind of why I think it's better. But I honestly think most of you out there would agree on this one. So yeah, let me know down in the comment section about The House of No Return. Which one do you think is better? Do you think the short story is better? Do you think the episode is better? I'm dying to know, and I'll see you next time.